They say the lantern guides the lost, but here...
I never thought I'd end up living in a goddamn armored truck. But here I am on night 3, and the smell of my own sweat mixed with dried blood and something else I don't want to think about has become normal. My name is Dalton Reed, and 6 days ago I was a completely different person living a completely different life. 6 days ago I was finishing up my shift at Bergstrom Security Solutions, a private military contractor outfit that specialized in transporting high-value assets. Cash, mostly, sometimes documents, occasionally things we weren't supposed to ask about. I'd been driving armored vehicles for 4 years, ever since I got out of the Army and realized civilian life paid better and involved significantly less getting shot at. The irony of that last part isn't lost on me now. The vehicle I'm sitting in right now is a Lenco Bearcat G3, which in normal human language means it's a 12-ton beast of steel and bulletproof glass designed to keep people safe in the absolute worst situations imaginable. It's got blast-resistant floors, run-flat tires, and enough armor plating to stop pretty much anything short of a rocket launcher. The thing cost the company somewhere north of $300,000. Right now, it's worth everything. It started on Thursday morning. I remember because I was supposed to have Thursday and Friday off. But my supervisor, Kellen, called me at 6 a.m. asking if I could cover a run. The regular driver, this guy named Voss, had called in sick. At the time, I was annoyed because I'd planned to drive up to my sister's place in Vermont. But the overtime pay was decent, and honestly, I needed the money. Student loans from a degree I never finished don't pay themselves. The run was supposed to be simple. Pick up the Bearcat from the depot, drive to 3 different bank branches around the city, facilitate the armored car services swapping out cash boxes, then return to base by 4 p.m. Standard route, nothing unusual. We did maybe 20 of these runs a week. I got to the depot around 7:30, did my pre-trip inspection like always. Checked the tires, the fuel, the oil levels. The Bearcat was in perfect condition because we maintained these things like our lives depended on them. Again, irony. I loaded my gear, lunch cooler, thermos of coffee, phone charger, clipboard with the route paperwork. I remember tossing a couple protein bars in the center console as backups because the route would take most of the day, and I tend to get hungry. The vehicle's interior is pretty sparse. You've got the driver's seat and passenger seat up front, both heavily bolted down and reinforced. The cabin area behind the seats is about 6 feet by 8 feet, enough room for maybe 6 people in full tactical gear to sit uncomfortably. There are benches along both sides, storage compartments built into the walls, and a small arsenal locker in the back that's supposed to stay locked unless things go completely sideways. The walls are lined with this weird foam-backed material that's supposed to absorb impacts. Everything is industrial gray and utilitarian. It smells like gun oil and the particular scent of heavy-duty vehicles, that mix of diesel and rubber and metal. The windows are small and thick, positioned high enough that you're basically looking down at everything from inside. Bulletproof glass about 3 inches thick. There's a forward windshield, side windows in the doors, and small rectangular windows in the back doors. The visibility isn't great compared to a normal vehicle, but you get used to it. You sit up high and you feel invincible, which is exactly the point. I pulled out of the depot at 8:15. Traffic was normal for a Thursday morning, busy but moving. I had a podcast playing through the vehicle's sound system, something about true crime that I can't even remember the name of now. First stop was a Chase branch downtown. Got there around 9, linked up with the armored car crew, facilitated the exchange. Routine. Nobody looked worried. Nobody mentioned anything weird. Second stop was around 10:30 at a Bank of America in the financial district. same deal. The guards seemed normal, maybe a little chatty. One of them, younger guy with red hair whose name I didn't catch, was talking about some viral video he'd seen. People doing stupid challenges online or something. I nodded along, not really paying attention. I ate one of my protein bars while they did their work. It was during the drive to the third stop that I started noticing something was off. The radio traffic on our company frequency started getting weird. Normally, it's just drivers checking in, dispatch confirming locations, the usual chatter. But around 11, I started hearing panicked voices. Someone named Garrett was screaming something about a situation at a hospital. Dispatch kept telling everyone to stay calm and stick to their routes. I turned on the regular radio, scanned through the stations. News channels were reporting some kind of incident at St. Catherine's Medical Center across town. Mass casualty event, they were saying. Possible chemical exposure. They were telling people to avoid the area. I remember feeling uneasy, but not scared. This was a big city. Crazy stuff happened sometimes. The third stop was a Wells Fargo in the industrial park near the river. I got there around noon and immediately knew something was wrong. There were more cars in the parking lot than usual, and people were standing around outside their vehicles looking at their phones. The armored car that was supposed to meet me wasn't there yet. I parked the Bearcat and waited. Company policy was clear. You don't leave the vehicle during a stop unless absolutely necessary, and even then, only if you have backup. I called dispatch on the radio. Took them 3 tries to answer, and when they did, the dispatcher sounded stressed. "Reed, what's your status?" "At location 3, waiting for the escort vehicle. They're not here yet." There was a long pause. I could hear other voices in the background, people talking urgently. "Reed, listen carefully. We're getting reports of violent incidents across multiple districts. Civil unrest, maybe riots. We're pulling all units back to the depot. Abandon the stop and return to base immediately." That got my attention. In 4 years working this job, I'd never heard dispatch tell anyone to abandon a scheduled stop. "Copy that. Returning to base now." I started the engine and began backing out of my parking spot when I saw them. 3 people running across the parking lot from the direction of the Wells Fargo entrance. At first, I thought they were just scared civilians, maybe fleeing whatever was happening inside. Then I saw what was chasing them. I don't know what else to call the things except people who weren't people anymore. There were 5 or 6 of them, moving in this wrong way that my brain couldn't quite process at first. They weren't running exactly, more like a fast, stumbling lurch. But what stood out was the way they moved. No hesitation, no self-preservation, just pure forward momentum toward the 3 people running. One of the runners, a woman in a bank uniform, tripped and fell. The things were on her in seconds. I'm not going to describe what I saw in detail because even now, 3 days later, it makes my stomach turn. Just know that it was violent and fast and wrong in every possible way. I should have driven away right then. That would have been the smart move. Instead, I sat there frozen, watching through the thick windshield as the other 2 runners made it to a car and fumbled with keys. One of the things peeled off from the group and went after them. It moved faster than seemed possible, covering the distance in this awful lurching sprint. That's when I really saw one up close. Middle-aged man in what had been a business suit, now torn and stained dark with blood. His skin had this grayish tint, and his eyes were wrong. Clouded and empty, but somehow focused. His jaw worked like he was chewing, even though there was nothing in his mouth. He slammed into the car where the 2 people had just managed to get inside and started beating on the window with his fists. No technique, No strategy, just mindless pounding. More of them were coming from the building now. A lot more. I counted at least a dozen pouring out of the Wells Fargo entrance, and I could see others in the distance, scattered across the parking lot, all of them moving toward any sound or movement. The radio crackled. All units, this is dispatch. We are implementing Emergency Protocol 7. Return to depot immediately. Do not stop for any reason. Repeat, do not stop. I put the Bearcat in drive and headed for the parking lot exit. The vehicle's engine is loud, a deep diesel rumble, and the sound attracted attention. Several of the things turned toward me and started moving in my direction. I accelerated, aiming for the exit that would take me to the main road. That's when the pickup truck came out of nowhere, running the red light at the intersection just outside the parking lot. It slammed into the Bearcat's passenger side at probably 40 miles an hour. In a normal vehicle, that would have been catastrophic. In 12 tons of armored steel, it was a hard jolt that threw me against my seatbelt and made everything inside the cabin rattle, but the Bearcat barely moved. The pickup, on the other hand, crumpled like aluminum foil. I stopped, instinct taking over. There might be someone hurt in that truck. I reached for the door handle and then stopped myself. Through the windshield, I could see the driver of the pickup, a young guy with blood streaming down his face from a head wound. He was trying to kick his way out of the crushed door. And heading toward him from multiple directions were at least 20 of those things. I made a decision that still haunts me. I hit the gas and drove away. The guilt hit me immediately, but so did the rationalization. I couldn't help him. Opening my door would have put me at risk. The Bearcat was built for intimidation and protection, not rescue operations. Every logical argument my brain could construct, all of them true. None of them making me feel any less like a coward. The drive back to the depot was a nightmare. Traffic was chaos. Cars abandoned in the middle of the road, accidents at every intersection, people running in random directions. I had to drive on the sidewalk twice to get around blockages. The Bearcat could handle it. The thing was designed for rough terrain. But every time I mounted a curb or pushed an abandoned car out of the way, I wondered if I was crushing someone who was hiding or hurt. The radio was a constant stream of panic. Drivers reporting attacks, dispatch trying to coordinate, everything falling apart in real time. I heard Garrett's voice again, the guy who'd been near the hospital earlier. He was screaming that they were everywhere, that his vehicle was surrounded. Then his transmission cut off and didn't come back. I was maybe 2 miles from the depot when I hit standstill traffic. The entire highway was blocked. I could see the reason about a quarter mile ahead, a multi-car pileup that blocked all lanes. Cars were stopped bumper to bumper, engines still running, drivers either gone or sitting inside looking terrified. I tried the radio again. "Dispatch, this is Reed. I'm stuck on Highway 9 about 2 miles from base. Road is completely blocked." No response. I tried 3 more times. Nothing but static and occasional fragments of other people's transmissions, none of them coherent. That's when I started to realize I might not make it back to the depot. The Bearcat had about half a tank of fuel. I had my lunch cooler with a sandwich, an apple, and a bag of chips. 2 protein bars, a thermos of coffee that was already empty. My phone was at 60% battery, but when I tried to call my sister in Vermont, the call wouldn't go through. Tried my parents in Florida. Same thing. The network was either overloaded or down. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, watching people abandon their cars and run. Some were heading back the way traffic had come. Others were trying to climb over the pileup ahead. I saw one man running between cars when he tripped and fell. 3 of those things came out from between vehicles and were on him before he could get back up. The people in nearby cars just watched or looked away. Nobody helped. Nobody could help. That's when I accepted that whatever was happening wasn't going to be over quickly. This wasn't a localized incident or a riot that would burn itself out. This was something bigger and worse and spreading fast. I made a decision. I couldn't go forward, and going back meant driving into the chaos I'd just escaped. So I pulled the Bearcat off the highway, over the concrete barrier on the right side, and down the embankment into an industrial area below. The vehicle handled it better than I expected. That's what run-flat tires and heavy suspension are for. But it was still a teeth-rattling drop of about 6 feet. I found myself in a warehouse district, mostly abandoned buildings and storage facilities. The streets were empty, which was both good and terrifying. I drove slowly, trying to figure out my next move. Find a secure location and wait for things to calm down? Try to navigate surface streets to the depot? Find a working phone and try to reach someone? The decision was made for me when I turned a corner and found myself facing a crowd of maybe 50 or 60 of those things. All of them clustered around the entrance to a warehouse where I could see broken windows and hear screaming from inside. The crowd turned as one toward the sound of the Bearcat's engine. I reversed hard, yanking the wheel to turn around, but the street was narrow and I had to do a 3-point turn. They were fast. Not car fast, but faster than any human should be able to move in that shambling, broken way. By the time I completed the turn, the closest ones were within 20 feet of the vehicle. One of them, a woman in a postal worker uniform, threw herself at the driver's side door. Her face hit the bulletproof glass with a wet smack that left a smear of dark fluid. She didn't seem to notice or care, just kept clawing at the window with broken fingernails, her mouth working silently. I floored it, and the Bearcat's acceleration threw me back in my seat. The vehicle's weight means it doesn't exactly leap forward, but once it gets moving, nothing stops it. I felt impacts as bodies bounced off the front bumper, heard the sound of things crunching under the tires. Tried not to think about what I was driving over. I drove for another 10 minutes, taking random turns until I found myself in an area I didn't recognize. Mix of industrial buildings and abandoned lots. I pulled into a large parking lot behind what looked like a defunct electronics warehouse and stopped. The engine ticked as it cooled. Outside, nothing moved. I sat there trying to slow my breathing and figure out what to do next. I was alive and unhurt. The vehicle was undamaged, except for some dents and what I really hoped were just dark smudges on the windshield. I had protection, mobility, and at least half a tank of fuel. What I didn't have was a plan, enough food, or any idea what the hell was happening. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. I tried the radio, scanning through every frequency I knew. Most were dead air. A few had emergency broadcasts telling people to shelter in place and await further instructions. One station was playing automated music. No traffic on the company frequency at all, not even static-filled fragments. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon. In a few hours it would be dark, and I had no idea what that meant in this new reality where people attacked each other like rabid animals. I decided to stay put for the night. The parking lot was large and open. Nothing could approach without me seeing it coming. The warehouse behind me had no windows on this side, and the doors I could see were chained shut. It seemed as secure as anywhere else. That's when I started really examining the Bearcat's interior, taking inventory of what I had. The process helped calm me down. gave me something concrete to focus on besides the memory of that postal worker's face hitting my window. Front cabin, driver and passenger seats. Center console with cup holders and a small storage area where I'd put those protein bars. Glove box with the vehicle registration, insurance papers, and a basic first aid kit. Company radio mounted to the dash. My personal items: empty coffee thermos, lunch cooler, phone charger, clipboard with paperwork I'd probably never need again. Behind the seats, the main cabin area. 2 benches along the sides, both with storage underneath. I popped them open. One side had basic emergency supplies: road flares, a reflective vest, jumper cables, a tire iron, a small tool kit. The other had what looked like old equipment: a couple of empty duffel bags, some rope, a box of zip ties, a few straps used for securing cargo. Back wall, the arsenal locker. Heavy steel door with a combination lock. Company policy said only supervisors and team leaders had the combination, which I wasn't. The door was solid, and I had no way to get it open without tools I didn't have. Whatever was inside, probably rifles and ammunition based on what I'd heard from other drivers, would stay locked. I did find a few useful things tucked into various compartments. A cheap plastic water bottle, about half full, a bag of stale pretzels, a windbreaker jacket, a small LED flashlight with working batteries, a roll of duct tape, some old newspapers, my complete food inventory, one sandwich that had been in my cooler for about 8 hours now. Starting to get soggy. 1 apple, 1 bag of chips, 2 protein bars, bag of stale pretzels, half bottle of water. Maybe 2,000 calories total if I was generous. Enough for a day, maybe a day and a half if I stretched it. The Bearcat had supplies for someone trapped inside, just not many. I found the vehicle manual in a pocket on the back of the passenger seat and actually read through it, looking for anything useful. Learned that the fuel tank held 40 gallons, and the vehicle got about 8 miles per gallon. I did the math. Roughly 320 miles on a full tank, maybe half that on what I had left. The manual also detailed the vehicle's features. Gun ports in the sides that could be opened from inside. Climate control system that could run off the battery. A backup battery system. External speaker controls that I'd never used. Instructions for the emergency power cutoff. As the sun set, I sat in the driver's seat and ate half my sandwich, rationing without really thinking about it. The bread was mushy and the turkey tasted off, but I forced it down. Drank maybe 2 inches from the water bottle. I'd been in survival situations before during my Army days, though those had been training exercises with safety nets. I knew the basics. Stay hydrated, conserve energy, don't make stupid decisions. Full darkness came fast. The parking lot lights didn't come on. Either the power was out or they were on timers that had never been set. I used the flashlight sparingly, just enough to double-check the door locks and make sure everything was secure. The Bearcat didn't have an interior dome light, which was probably a security feature but was annoying as hell right now. I tried to sleep in the driver's seat, reclined as far as it would go, which wasn't much. The seat was designed for alertness, not comfort. Every sound outside made me jump. Wind rattling a loose piece of siding, something skittering across pavement that was probably just trash. Distant noises I couldn't identify. Around midnight, I heard the first real sound. Footsteps. Multiple sets, moving across the parking lot. I sat up slowly, trying to see through the windshield. The moon was about half full, giving just enough light to make out shapes. 3 figures walking in that distinctive wrong way, jerking and lurching, but still somehow purposeful. They passed within 50 feet of the Bearcat, heading toward the main road. Never looked in my direction. After a few minutes, They were gone. I didn't sleep much that first night. Maybe an hour or two in fragmented chunks. Every time I'd start to drift off, my brain would show me that postal worker's face, or the woman in the bank uniform, or the young guy trying to kick his way out of the wrecked pickup. Around 4 in the morning, I gave up trying and just sat there, watching the sky slowly lighten. Day 2 started with inventory check and rationing decisions. I ate the apple and a quarter of the bag of chips for breakfast, sipped water. My mouth was dry and my body was telling me I needed more fluids, but that half bottle had to last. I had no idea where I'd find more. The sun came up and I got my first good look at my surroundings in daylight. The parking lot was larger than I'd thought, easily space for 100 cars, completely empty except for the Bearcat. The warehouse behind me was massive. 3 stories of brick with boarded-up windows and faded signs. To my left was a chain-link fence separating this lot from another industrial property. To my right, more abandoned buildings. Straight ahead, the access road that led back to the main streets. I saw them around 8 in the morning, a group of about a dozen wandering aimlessly through the access road area. They weren't focused on anything, just moving randomly, bumping into each other and off walls. One of them was a teenage kid in a basketball jersey. Another was an elderly woman still wearing a hospital gown. A man in a mechanic's uniform. All of them with that same gray skin, those clouded eyes, that wrong way of moving. I watched them through the windshield for maybe an hour. They showed no signs of intelligence or planning. When one of them wandered off in a direction, the others didn't follow unless a sound drew them. A loose hubcap blew across the pavement and they all jerked toward it, moving as one. When the sound stopped, they dispersed again. Around noon, I was so thirsty I gave in and finished the water bottle. That left me with no liquids except whatever moisture I could get from the rest of my food. The inside of the Bearcat was starting to heat up. The sun was beating down on the metal roof, and the bulletproof glass turned the interior into a greenhouse. I found the climate control and tried to turn it on, but the vehicle needed to be running for it to work, and I didn't want to waste fuel or make noise. I stripped off my uniform shirt, left myself in just an undershirt and pants. Even that was too much. I was sweating heavily and my head was starting to ache. Dehydration setting in already. That afternoon, I made my first major decision. I needed water, which meant I needed to find some. The warehouse behind me might have a bathroom with toilet tanks. The fence to my left might lead to other buildings with supplies. Either option meant leaving the Bearcat, which went against every instinct I had. But dying of thirst while sitting in perfect safety wasn't survival. It was just a slower death. I spent 2 hours watching the area, learning the patterns. The group on the access road moved in rough circuits, never coming into the parking lot. A few lone ones wandered past at irregular intervals. The warehouse had a loading dock with a door that hung partially open. No movement visible inside. I decided to make the attempt. If I moved fast and quiet, I could reach the loading dock, get inside, find water if there was any, and get back to the vehicle. 5 minutes, maybe 10. I gathered what I needed. Tire iron for a weapon, empty water bottle to fill, flashlight, my phone even though it was useless, just because leaving it behind felt wrong. I put my uniform shirt back on. Long sleeves would provide some protection if anything grabbed me. I sat with my hand on the door handle for probably 10 minutes, working up the courage. Every disaster scenario ran through my mind. What if the door made noise? What if there were more of them inside the warehouse than I could handle? What if I couldn't get back to the vehicle? The smart move was probably to stay put, ration what I had, and hope for rescue. But nobody was coming. Deep down, I knew that. Whatever had happened, it had happened fast and big enough that the entire system had collapsed. Dispatch wasn't responding. Emergency broadcasts told people to shelter in place, which meant the authorities had no plan. I was on my own. I opened the door. The sound was louder than I expected, a heavy metallic clunk as the armored door swung outward. I froze, waiting to see if anything reacted. Nothing moved. I stepped down from the vehicle, feeling exposed the second my boots hit pavement. The sun was bright and hot. The air smelled like asphalt and something organic that was starting to rot. I left the door open, no way was I risking the sound of closing it, and moved quickly toward the loading dock. The tire iron felt inadequate in my hand. The distance was maybe 75 feet, a straight shot across open pavement. Every step felt like it took forever. I reached the loading dock and climbed up. The partially open door led into darkness. I clicked on the flashlight, kept it pointed low. The beam showed me a large open space full of empty shelving units and scattered trash. No movement, no sounds except my own breathing. I slipped inside, giving my eyes a moment to adjust. The warehouse was gutted, anything valuable long since stripped out. But in the far corner, I could see what looked like an office area, door hanging open. Offices had bathrooms, bathrooms had water. I moved through the space as quietly as I could, which wasn't very. My boots seemed impossibly loud on the concrete floor. Every shadow looked like a potential threat. The office was exactly what I'd hoped for, small bathroom with a toilet and sink. I tried the faucet first, no water pressure. Then I lifted the toilet tank lid. The tank was full. I could have cried. I dipped the empty bottle in, filling it, trying not to think too hard about what I was drinking. It was water. That's all that mattered. I filled the bottle, drank half of it immediately, filled it again. The water was stale and tasted like minerals, but it was the best thing I'd ever consumed. I was capping the bottle when I heard it, a sound from somewhere in the warehouse. Shuffling, something being knocked over. My heart started hammering. I clicked off the flashlight and stood absolutely still. More sounds, multiple sources. They were inside the warehouse with me. I had no idea how many or where exactly they were. But between me and the loading dock exit, there was now something that wanted to kill me. I had two choices. Try to sneak past them in the dark, or find another way out. The office had a window, but it was small and high up, covered with bars. The main warehouse had emergency exits, but those would be alarmed. Though, in a world where nothing worked right, maybe not. I decided to move. Staying put meant eventually being found. I crept out of the office, keeping the flashlight off, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light filtering in from high windows. I could see shapes moving about 50 feet away. 3 of them, maybe 4. One was turning over boxes like it was looking for something, completely random and purposeless. I moved along the wall, heading for where I remembered seeing an emergency exit. The tire iron felt slippery in my sweaty grip. Every step was calculated, weight shifted slowly. One of them was between me and the exit. Older man in coveralls, swaying slightly, head tilted at an angle that necks shouldn't bend to. I had to get past him. The wall didn't offer enough room to slip by unnoticed. It was maybe 3 feet between him and the shelving. If I tried, he'd hear me or see me or sense me somehow. But I couldn't wait for him to move because they didn't move with purpose. He might stand there for hours. I picked up a piece of broken shelving from the floor. Plastic, lightweight. I threw it as hard as I could toward the far side of the warehouse. It clattered loudly in the darkness. All of them turned toward the sound and started moving that direction. The man in coveralls lurched past me, close enough that I could smell him, rot and something chemical. I didn't move, didn't breathe. He passed within 2 feet of where I stood, pressed against the wall. The second he was past, I ran for the emergency exit. My boots pounded concrete, and behind me, I heard them react, turning back toward this new sound. I hit the exit door at full speed, the crash bar giving way with a bang that echoed through the entire space. Sunlight blinded me. I was out in an alley behind the warehouse, trash dumpsters on one side, chain-link fence on the other. The door I'd come through had triggered no alarm. Just my luck running in the right direction for once. I ran along the building toward where I'd parked the Bearcat, hearing them coming out behind me. I rounded the corner back into the parking lot and saw the Bearcat exactly where I'd left it. Door still open. They were maybe 10 seconds behind me. I sprinted the last 30 feet, threw myself into the driver's seat, and yanked the door shut. The lock engaged with a solid thunk. They hit the vehicle maybe 5 seconds later. 4 of them, including the man in coveralls. They surrounded the Bearcat, beating on the doors and windows with their fists. No strategy, no intelligence, just mindless aggression. I sat in the driver's seat, shaking, clutching the water bottle like it was gold. After maybe 5 minutes of sustained pounding, they started to lose interest. One by one, they drifted away, moving back toward whatever had drawn them into the warehouse in the first place. Within 10 minutes, the parking lot was empty again. I sat there for a long time, heart slowly returning to normal, processing what had just happened. I'd left the vehicle and survived. I'd found water. I'd learned that they reacted to sound but weren't smart enough to problem solve. And I'd confirmed that the Bearcat was genuinely impenetrable to them. They couldn't break the glass or force the doors even with sustained effort. That second night, I allowed myself a small celebration. I ate half of the remaining sandwich and 1 protein bar, drank water without guilt. I'd taken a risk, and it had paid off. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could survive long enough for things to get better. I was wrong about things getting better, but right about being able to survive. At least for a while. Day 3 started with a problem I'd been dreading. I needed to piss, and doing it inside the vehicle wasn't something I wanted to contemplate. The Bearcat didn't have a bathroom, obviously. During normal operations, you just hold it until the next stop or find a gas station. Now I had to decide between enduring increasing discomfort or opening the door again. I looked around the parking lot. Empty. I grabbed the empty pretzel bag. Plastic lined, would serve as a makeshift urinal, and decided to risk it. I opened the door just enough to lean out, used the bag while keeping my eyes scanning for any movement. The process took maybe 30 seconds, longest 30 seconds of my life. Nothing appeared. I sealed the bag, tossed it as far as I could from the vehicle, and locked myself back inside. The indignity of it should have bothered me more, but I was adapting fast to a new reality where normal standards didn't apply. I was alive. That's what mattered. My food situation was getting critical. I had half a sandwich that was definitely going bad. I could smell it even in the sealed cooler. The remaining protein bar, half a bag of chips, the stale pretzels. Even rationing aggressively, I had maybe 1 more day of food. I spent the morning watching the area, looking for potential sources of supplies. The warehouse was a bust. I'd already confirmed it was stripped. The other buildings around the parking lot all looked equally abandoned and picked over. But about a 1/4 mile down the access road, I could see what looked like a convenience store or gas station. Small building, parking lot, pumps. The logical move was to try for it. Drive the Bearcat there, loot whatever was inside, drive back, use the vehicle's protection to minimize risk. The problem was fuel. I had maybe a quarter tank left now. The gas station might have fuel I could pump, but it might not. If I drove there and couldn't get back, I'd be stuck somewhere less secure than where I was now. I decided to wait another day, eat the last of what I had, then make the attempt tomorrow when desperation would force my hand anyway. At least that way I'd know for sure I had no other options. Around midday, a group of them passed through the parking lot. Different from the ones I'd seen before. At least I thought they were different. Hard to tell since they all had that same dead-eyed look. 10 or 12 of them, moving in a loose pack. One of them split off and approached the Bearcat. Woman, maybe 40s, wearing scrubs like she'd been a nurse. She walked right up to the driver's side and pressed her face against the window. Her breath fogged the glass. Those clouded eyes stared through me like I wasn't there. She opened her mouth and bit at the window, teeth scraping against the bulletproof glass with a sound that made my skin crawl. I sat absolutely still. She kept biting, kept scraping her teeth against the glass. Blood appeared around her mouth. She was damaging herself and didn't notice or care. After a few minutes, she lost interest and wandered away, following the group wherever they were going. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I exhaled slowly and tried to slow my heart rate. They couldn't get in. They couldn't break the glass. I was safe. But watching her bite the window, seeing the mindless hunger in her ruined face, drove home exactly what I was up against. These weren't people anymore. They were something else. Something that couldn't be reasoned with or avoided permanently. The rest of that day passed slowly. I finished the spoiled sandwich because I couldn't afford to waste it, even though it made my stomach cramp. Drank of water. Tried to rest but couldn't because the heat inside the Bearcat was oppressive. The sun turned the interior into an oven, and I had no way to cool it down without running the engine, which I refused to do. By evening, I was lightheaded and nauseous, either from bad food or heat exhaustion or stress, probably all three. I lay on the bench in the back cabin, stripped down to my underwear, trying not to move because moving made me hotter. The water bottle was half empty again. I needed to find more soon, needed to find food, needed to figure out an actual plan beyond sitting in this parking lot, slowly cooking. That third night is when I heard the screaming. It came from somewhere to the north, carried on the evening air. Human voices, multiple people terrified, then gunshots, a lot of them, then silence. I sat up, pressing my face to the window, trying to see anything in that direction. Just darkness and distant building shapes. The screaming and shooting lasted maybe 3 minutes total. Then nothing. Other people. Still alive, still fighting. The knowledge was both comforting and terrible. Comforting because I wasn't alone in the world. Terrible because their screams meant they'd lost whatever fight they'd been in. I didn't sleep at all that night. Just lay there listening to the darkness, jumping at every sound, wondering if whatever had killed those people was heading my direction. Wondering if I'd be next. Morning of day 4 came with a decision already made. I couldn't stay here anymore. The heat was killing me. I was out of food except one protein bar, and my water wouldn't last another day. The gas station was my only option. I ate the protein bar for breakfast, taking small bites and chewing slowly to make it last. Drank a few mouthfuls of water. Did a check of the vehicle. Everything still secure, no damage besides some dents and scratches on the exterior. The fuel gauge showed just under a quarter tank. I started the engine. The diesel rumble sounded impossibly loud after days of silence. Nothing appeared immediately, but I knew the sound would draw them. I couldn't stay idling. I put the Bearcat in drive and headed for the access road. The quarter mile to the gas station felt like 10. I drove slowly, checking every angle, watching for movement. Bodies littered the street, actual dead bodies, not the walking kind, just corpses left where they'd fallen. Most had been torn apart. I tried not to look at them too closely. The gas station was a quick trip, one of those newer ones with a large convenience store attached. The parking lot had maybe a dozen abandoned cars scattered around. The front windows were smashed, trash and debris everywhere. But the pumps were intact, and that's what mattered. I pulled up to the pump closest to the building, positioning the Bearcat so the driver's door faced away from the broken windows. Minimal exposure if I needed to get out. The engine ticked as I shut it off. Outside, nothing moved. I sat there for 10 minutes, just watching. No sign of them, no sounds. The gas station looked abandoned, looted days ago and left empty. Could be safe, could be full of them. I grabbed the tire iron and opened the door. The hinges squealed and I froze, but nothing reacted. I stepped down, moved to the pump, tried to start it. The digital display was dead, no power. I checked the other pumps. Same thing. No power meant no pumping gas, unless I could access the manual override. Most pumps had one, required by fire codes. I walked around the pump island, looking for the access panel. Found it on the side of the middle pump, a small metal door with a padlock. I used the tire iron to pry it open. Inside was a lever. I pulled it and heard a mechanical clunk. Back to the Bearcat's fuel door. I grabbed the nozzle, squeezed the handle. Fuel started flowing. I could have shouted. Instead, I just stood there, feeding gas into the tank while keeping the tire iron ready and my eyes scanning constantly. The tank took forever to fill. 40 gallons is a lot of fuel when it's gravity-fed from underground tanks. I stood there for probably 15 minutes, exposed, vulnerable, every second feeling like an eternity. The pump finally clicked off, full tank. Now for the hard part. The convenience store, food, water, supplies, all inside a building with broken windows and blind corners where anything could be hiding. I approached the entrance carefully. The automatic doors were jammed half open. I squeezed through, tire iron raised. The flashlight in my other hand showed me aisles of mostly empty shelves. The place had been thoroughly looted. Anything obviously useful was gone. But looters missed things. I just had to find what they'd missed. I moved through the aisles quickly, grabbing anything remotely useful. Beef jerky packages scattered on the floor. A dented can of energy drink under a shelf. Pack of gum. Box of granola bars that had been torn open but still had a few bars left. Bottle of motor oil. Not food, but might be useful. A lighter someone had dropped. A first aid kit from behind the counter, surprisingly intact. In the back, I found the employee area. Small bathroom, storage closet. The bathroom had a toilet tank, more water. I filled my bottle, then noticed a case of bottled water shoved in the corner of the storage closet, probably employee stash. Half the bottles were gone, but 12 remained. I grabbed the whole case. I was loading my arms with supplies when I heard it. Movement from the front of the store. Slow footsteps, multiple sets. They'd heard me. They were coming. I had too much to carry and couldn't fight while holding it all. I dropped everything except the tire iron and the flashlight, moved toward the back of the store. There had to be another exit. Fire regulations required it. Loading door, emergency door, something. The footsteps were getting closer. I could hear them knocking into displays, moving through the aisles. At least 3 or 4. The back wall had a metal door marked "Emergency Exit Only." I hit it hard and it flew open, alarm blaring. Didn't matter now. I ran to the Bearcat, yanked the driver's door open, threw myself inside. Locked it just as the first one came around the building's corner. Man in a delivery uniform, moving in that distinctive broken lurch. Behind him came more. They surrounded the vehicle within seconds. A dozen of them, all clawing and biting at the doors and windows. The noise was horrible. Hands slapping metal, teeth scraping glass. That sound they made that wasn't quite breathing and wasn't quite growling, just this wet rasp. I sat there breathing hard, furious at myself. I'd left the supplies, the water, the food, all of it still inside the store. I had a full tank of gas and nothing else. I'd accomplished exactly nothing except making noise and attracting a crowd. They didn't stop. They kept attacking the Bearcat, relentless, mindless. 20 minutes passed. 30. They showed no signs of losing interest. I started to worry they never would. That I'd be stuck here surrounded until the fuel ran out or I died of thirst. Then one of them, a teenage boy in a football jersey, grabbed onto the side mirror and pulled himself partially onto the hood. He lay there on the windshield, face pressed against the glass, staring in at me. Dead eyes about 2 feet from mine. He opened his mouth and bit at the glass, cracking his teeth. Blood smeared across the windshield. I made a decision. I started the engine. The ones at the sides of the vehicle startled at the sound, but didn't move away. The kid on the hood didn't react at all. I put it in drive and hit the gas. The Bearcat lurched forward. The kid tumbled off the hood, and I felt the bump as the front tires rolled over him. The ones in front of the vehicle didn't move out of the way. I plowed through them. 12 tons of armored vehicle against human bodies. They went under the wheels or bounced off the grill. The impacts felt wrong, soft and hard at the same time. I drove across the parking lot, picking up speed, trying to get clear. A few of them chased, but couldn't keep up. I took a turn too sharp and clipped an abandoned car, felt the Bearcat's momentum carry it through. No significant damage. I headed back toward the warehouse parking lot, the one place I knew was relatively secure. As I drove, I tried not to think about what I'd just done. They weren't people anymore, I told myself. They were already dead, already gone. Running them over wasn't murder, it was survival. The rationalization felt hollow, but necessary. I made it back to the parking lot and did a quick loop to make sure it was empty. Parked in the same spot I'd spent the previous nights. Shut off the engine. Sat there shaking, full tank of gas, no food. Same half bottle of water I'd started with. I'd risked everything and gained nothing. Night 4, I lay in the back of the Bearcat and felt despair settling in. The heat was unbearable even after sunset. I was so hungry my stomach had stopped cramping and just felt hollow. My lips were cracked from dehydration. My body ached from sleeping in the vehicle. I thought about my sister in Vermont, parents in Florida, friends from the army I hadn't talked to in years. Were any of them alive? Had this happened everywhere or just here? I had no way to know. The radio was dead, phone was useless. I was completely cut off. Around midnight I heard engines, actual vehicles, moving somewhere in the distance. I sat up, pressed against the window, trying to see. Nothing visible, but the sound was unmistakable. Other survivors with working vehicles, maybe military, maybe rescue operations. The sound faded after a few minutes. They were gone, heading somewhere else, and I had no way to signal them or follow. The knowledge that other people were out there, organized enough to be in vehicles, made my isolation feel even more crushing. I must have fallen asleep at some point because I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and an oven-like heat. Day 5. I'd been in this vehicle for 4 nights and 5 days. I was out of food, nearly out of water, covered in my own dried sweat and grime. The Bearcat smelled like a locker room. I had to do something different. Staying in this parking lot was a slow death. The gas station had proven too risky, but there had to be other options. I needed to find either other survivors or a better location to hole up. Somewhere with supplies, running water, maybe other people. I started the engine and began to drive. No destination in mind, just moving. The streets were a nightmare. Wrecked cars everywhere, bodies, fires that had burned out days ago, leaving just charred ruins. And them, wandering alone or in groups, scattered throughout the city like a plague. I drove through a residential area, saw houses with broken windows and doors hanging open. Saw a group of them clustered around something in a yard, didn't stop to see what. Turned down a street where someone had tried to barricade it with furniture and cars, then apparently failed because the barricade was scattered and bodies lay everywhere. I passed an elementary school. The parking lot was full of abandoned cars, blood on the playground equipment. I kept driving. Around noon, I found something promising. A big box hardware store, one of those massive buildings with huge parking lots. The front entrance was blocked by shopping carts, deliberately arranged. Someone had fortified it. The building looked mostly intact. I circled the parking lot slowly. No movement outside. I drove around to the back, found the loading docks. One of the bay doors was partially open, maybe 3 feet of clearance. Could be a way in, could be a trap. I sat there idling, trying to decide. The engine noise was attracting them. I could see maybe a dozen converging on the parking lot from various directions. Decision time. Risk going inside or drive away and keep searching. A sign on the building caught my eye. Garden Center. These big stores had garden centers with outdoor areas. Outdoor areas meant plants, meant soil, meant bags of fertilizer and hoses and outdoor furniture and water. Garden centers had water features, fountains, display models that held water. Maybe not clean, but water. I pulled the Bearcat up to the loading dock, positioning it directly in front of the partially open bay door. If I backed in, I could access the interior directly from the vehicle. The ones converging on the lot were maybe 60 seconds away. I threw the Bearcat into reverse and backed into the loading dock. The height wasn't perfect. The vehicle was higher than the dock, but close enough. I jumped out of the driver's seat into the back cabin and opened the rear doors. The gap between the Bearcat's rear and the bay door was about 2 feet. I could squeeze through. I grabbed the tire iron and flashlight and climbed down into the gap. The ones approaching the parking lot would reach the vehicle in seconds. I squeezed under the bay door and into the building, then yanked the door down behind me. It slammed shut with a bang that echoed through the entire space. Total darkness. I clicked on the flashlight. The beam showed me a large warehouse area full of stacked pallets and inventory. Everything was still and silent. No signs of them inside. I moved quickly through the warehouse, looking for the door that would lead into the retail floor. Found it after maybe 2 minutes. Heavy metal door locked. I used the tire iron to force it, bending the frame enough that it popped open. The retail floor was dimly lit by skylights, massive space full of aisles. The front entrance barricade was visible in the distance. Shopping carts stacked 3 high and reinforced with lumber. Smart. Someone had known what they were doing. But where were they? The store looked abandoned now, but the barricade was recent. Days old, not weeks. Someone had been here, fought to secure this place, then either left or died. I searched for the garden center, found signs pointing toward the back corner of the store, moved through aisles of tools and building supplies, everything still mostly organized. This place hadn't been looted hard, probably because the barricade had kept most people out. The garden center was exactly what I'd hoped for. Large open area with skylights providing natural light. Aisles of bags of soil and mulch, racks of hand tools, seeds, lawn furniture, and in the center, a display fountain that was bone dry but had a concrete basin that could hold water. More importantly, I found a utility sink in the corner. I tried the faucet. Nothing. But there was a water heater mounted on the wall. I found the drain valve at the bottom of the tank and opened it. Brown, rusty water poured out at first, then clearer. I let it run for a minute, then caught some in my hand and tasted it. Hot and stale with minerals, but drinkable. I filled the water bottle, drank the whole thing, filled it again, drank that too. The relief was incredible. My body soaked up the water like desert sand. I must have drank a gallon over the next hour, filling and refilling the bottle, not caring how much noise I made. Food was next. I explored the store systematically. The checkout lanes had been looted of candy and snacks. The seasonal section had nothing useful. But in the back I found break room, employee area with lockers and a small kitchen. The fridge had spoiled food, but the cabinets had instant coffee, sugar packets, tea bags, and 3 cans of soup. Not much, but better than nothing. I ate 1 can of soup cold, forcing down the congealed chicken noodle mush. It was the first real food I'd had in over 24 hours. The sugar packets went into my pocket. Pure calories, useful if I got desperate. I spent the rest of the afternoon exploring and gathering supplies. Found a camping section with propane canisters, waterproof matches, a small camping stove. Grabbed a backpack and filled it with anything useful: duct tape, zip ties, rope, a knife set, work gloves, flashlight batteries. Found the hardware section and grabbed tools, screwdrivers, pliers, a hammer. In the automotive section, I found something perfect: a 5-gallon gas can and a siphon kit. Could pull fuel from abandoned cars, extend my range significantly. Grabbed several cans and the siphon. The store had been a gold mine, and I'd almost missed it. The question now was whether to stay here or load everything into the Bearcat and leave. The building was secure, had supplies, had water from the heater tank, but it also had no real fortifications beyond the front barricade, and I'd already announced my presence by forcing doors and making noise. I decided to stay the night and decide in the morning. I moved supplies to the loading dock area near the Bearcat, creating a staging area. Ate another can of soup, drank more water, found some cardboard and made a rough bed on the concrete floor. It was still hot, but less oppressive than inside the vehicle. I could stretch out, I could move around. For the first time in days, I felt almost human. I slept hard that night, probably 8 or 9 hours straight. The exhaustion and stress of the previous days caught up with me all at once. When I woke up, the skylights showed it was morning, day 6. I'd survived almost a week. The water heater tank was nearly empty when I checked it. I'd have to find another source soon if I stayed here. The 2 remaining cans of soup wouldn't last long. I needed a better plan than just surviving day to day in a hardware store. I went back to the garden center and really explored it. Found bags of fertilizer, which got me thinking. Fertilizer had nitrogen. Nitrogen and fuel could make explosives. Not that I wanted to blow anything up, but the knowledge might be useful. Chemistry degree that I never finished, finally paying off. I found seeds, vegetables, herbs, flowers, bags of potting soil. If the power was out everywhere, if this was going to be a long-term situation, people would need to grow food. These supplies would be valuable. Then I found something that changed everything. In the back corner of the garden center, hidden behind a display of lawn ornaments, was a small greenhouse section. And in that greenhouse section was a water collection system. Big plastic barrels connected to a gutter system that had been installed as a demonstration model. The barrels were about a quarter full of rainwater. I popped the lid on one and looked inside. The water was relatively clear, maybe some debris floating in it. I tasted it carefully. Clean, cool, wonderful. Dozens of gallons, probably 50 or 60 total between the 3 barrels. I'd found a sustainable water supply. That changed the equation. With water handled and some food, this place could work as a base. Better than the parking lot, better than staying mobile and burning fuel. I could fortify it properly, gather more supplies, maybe even set up something long-term. I spent day 6 working on improvements. Used lumber from the building materials section to reinforce the loading dock bay door I'd forced open. Created a secondary barrier inside the warehouse area. If they got through the bay door, they'd hit this inner fortification. Found sheet metal and screws and reinforced the door between the warehouse and retail floor. In the automotive section, I found car alarms. Took 3 of them and set them up as perimeter alerts around the garden center. If anything came through, the motion sensors would trigger the alarms and give me warning. They were battery powered, and I had no idea how long the batteries would last. But it was better than nothing. Found the electrical section and grabbed anything useful. Wire, batteries, light bulbs, an emergency hand crank radio that might work if I was lucky. I cranked it for 5 minutes and got static, then fragments of an automated broadcast. Remain indoors. Emergency services, if you are hearing this message. It cut out and I couldn't get it back. But it confirmed the outside world still existed in some form. Someone somewhere was still broadcasting. That knowledge was worth more than any amount of supplies. I found the paint section and used spray paint to mark on the floor of the garden center, a map of the store, noting exits, supply locations, fortified areas. Added a tally for days survived. 6 marks. Felt like 60. Day 7. I woke up to the sound of rain. Heavy rain, drumming on the skylights. I ran to the greenhouse section and watched as the barrels started filling from the demonstration gutter system. Nature providing water without me having to search for it. I could have wept. The rain also meant the outside would be washed clean of some of the smell. Blood and rot would wash away, at least partially. The rain might confuse them, mask sounds. If I was going to make a supply run to the Bearcat or explore the surrounding area, today would be the day. I geared up, backpack full of supplies, tire iron as a weapon, work gloves. Grabbed a better weapon from the tool section, a long pry bar, steel, better reach than the tire iron. Felt more confident with a real weapon. I opened the bay door and looked out. The Bearcat sat there untouched, rain streaming down its armored sides. The parking lot was empty. I could see them in the distance, wandering aimlessly in the rain, but none close by. I moved to the vehicle and checked it. No damage beyond what was already there. Fuel gauge still showed full. I grabbed some items I'd left inside. My company radio, the clipboard with route information that seemed like an artifact from another life. My phone that was now completely dead. Brought them back inside. Spent the rest of the day organizing the garden center into a proper living space. Set up a corner with a cardboard bed and some cushions from the patio furniture section. Created a kitchen area with a camping stove, cans of soup, and the food I'd gathered. The water barrels became my bathroom of sorts. I could heat water on the camping stove for washing, use a bucket for waste that I'd dump outside when necessary. Made a workshop area with the tools, a storage area for supplies, an alert area near the car alarms where I could watch the approaches. The garden center became home. Day 8 was quiet. I spent it resting, eating properly for the first time in a week, drinking all the water I wanted. My body started to recover. The headaches faded. My thinking got clearer. I took inventory of everything I had and made lists of what I still needed. Food was the big concern. 2 cans of soup wouldn't last. I needed to find more, which meant leaving the relative security of the store. But not yet. Not until I'd built up my strength and scouted the area properly. I went up to the roof, found an access ladder in the warehouse area that led to a hatch, pushed it open carefully and climbed out. The roof was flat with mechanical equipment and skylights. From up here I could see for miles. The city was dead. Smoke rose from dozens of fires. Buildings burned unchecked. Streets were clogged with abandoned vehicles. And everywhere, scattered throughout the urban landscape, were them. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. Just walking, wandering, clustering anywhere there had been noise or movement. In the distance, I saw one intact area. Looked like a hospital or medical center, surrounded by a wall of vehicles and barriers. Smoke rose from that area too, but it looked controlled, like campfires. Other survivors. Had to be. Maybe 100 people or more based on the size of the compound. The hospital was maybe 3 miles away. In the Bearcat, that would be 15 or 20 minutes in normal conditions. Now? Could take hours, could be impossible. The streets between here and there were choked with debris. But knowing other survivors existed, seeing proof that people were organizing, gave me hope. I wasn't alone. If I could reach them, I might find safety. Real safety, not just a temporary holdout in a hardware store. I climbed back down and spent the rest of the day planning, mapped out potential routes to the hospital compound, calculated fuel usage, figured out what supplies I'd need for the journey. The Bearcat could make it, probably. But once I left here, I couldn't come back. Too risky. I'd have to commit. The question was timing. Leave now while I still had energy and supplies, or wait and build up more resources first? Every day I waited was a day those survivors might leave, or their compound might fall, or something might change. But every day I prepared was a day that increased my chances of making it. Day 9, I made up my mind. I'd leave tomorrow. One more day to gather everything I could carry, then make the run to the hospital. Either I'd make it or I wouldn't. But sitting in this store waiting wasn't survival. It was just postponing the inevitable. I spent the day in frantic preparation. Raided every section of the store for anything useful. Found more food in unexpected places, protein powder in the fitness section, energy bars near the checkout. Beef jerky someone had stashed behind a display. Grabbed every container I could find and filled them with water from the barrels. Made multiple trips to the Bearcat, loading supplies into the back cabin until it was packed. Found the paint section again and grabbed several cans of spray paint. Wrote on the store's front barricade in huge letters, "Survivor went to hospital, Dalton Reed," along with the date. If anyone came looking, if my sister somehow made it here, if anyone cared, they'd know where I went. That night, night 9, I sat in the garden center and thought about everything that had happened. 10 days ago, I'd been driving an armored truck on a routine shift, bored and thinking about the weekend. Now I was sitting in a hardware store with a pry bar across my lap, planning to drive through a zombie-infested city to reach a compound that might not even be accepting new people. The world had ended and I'd survived. So far, that had to count for something. I allowed myself one luxury. Found the alcohol section. Most hardware stores sold it for solvents and thinning paint. Found a bottle of denatured alcohol, not really drinkable. Then found something better, rubbing alcohol. Mixed it with sugar water and drank it, making a nasty, improvised cocktail. It burned and tasted horrible, and I didn't care. A toast to survival. Day 10. Time to leave. I loaded the last supplies into the Bearcat, strapped everything down securely, filled every possible container with water, jugs, bottles, buckets, didn't matter. Food packed into every available space, tools, weapons. Enough supplies that if the hospital didn't work out, I could survive on my own for weeks. I left the store running, leaving the bay door open behind me. Let it be looted. I wouldn't need it anymore. The Bearcat felt heavy with all the weight, responded slower than normal. But the engine rumbled strong and the tires gripped the pavement. I pulled out of the loading dock and into the parking lot, oriented myself toward a downtown where the hospital compound was, and started driving. The first mile was slow going. Had to weave around wrecks, push through blocked intersections. Saw them everywhere, attracted by the engine noise. They couldn't catch the Bearcat, but they tried, throwing themselves at the vehicle as I passed. The impacts against the armored sides became normal background noise. I got onto a main road that looked mostly clear. Picked up speed, maybe 30 miles an hour. The Bearcat swayed with the weight, but held steady. I was making good progress. Then the engine started knocking. Just a small sound at first, barely audible over the diesel rumble. But it got louder. Something wrong with the engine. I checked the gauges, oil pressure dropping, temperature rising. I must have damaged something during the previous days, either from hitting vehicles or running over debris, or just the stress of pushing a 12-ton vehicle beyond its normal limits. The knocking got worse. I had maybe half a mile to the hospital compound, could see it in the distance. The engine was going to fail. Question was whether it would fail before or after I got there. I pushed the accelerator harder, coaxing more speed out of the dying vehicle. 40 miles an hour. 50. The Bearcat wasn't designed for this kind of speed when loaded, but I had no choice. The engine screamed in protest. The knocking became a grinding sound. A quarter mile from the compound. I could see people on the walls now, actual living people watching me approach. The engine started missing, power dropping. Come on, I thought. Just a little further. 200 yards. The engine seized, just stopped completely, no warning. The Bearcat coasted on momentum, slowing rapidly. I was still doing maybe 20 miles an hour when the vehicle stopped completely, maybe 100 yards from the compound gate. Behind me, drawn by the noise of the dying engine, was a crowd. Had to be 50 or 60 of them, pouring onto the road from side streets, moving toward the stopped Bearcat in a wave. I grabbed the backpack with essential supplies, water, food, weapons, left everything else. No time. Opened the rear doors and jumped out. Hit the pavement running. The compound gate was closed. The people on the wall were shouting, but I couldn't make out words. The crowd behind me was gaining ground. I ran harder than I'd ever run in my life. The backpack bouncing against my spine, the pry bar clutched in one hand. 50 yards. The gate started opening. Someone inside was pulling it back. Too slow. I could hear them behind me, close, that wet, rasping sound they made. 20 yards. The gate was halfway open. I could see faces inside, men and women armed with guns and makeshift weapons. They were shouting at me to hurry. 10 yards. Something grabbed my backpack. I felt it tug but didn't slow down. The strap broke and the backpack fell away. Didn't matter. Keep running. 5 yards. I dove through the partially open gate and someone pulled me the rest of the way. The gate slammed shut behind me and heavy locks engaged. Fists started pounding on the metal seconds later, but they couldn't get through. I lay on the ground inside the compound, gasping for air, alive. I'd made it. Someone bent over me. A woman, maybe 40, gray hair and a ponytail, wearing tactical gear. She had a gun pointed at my face. "You bit?" she asked. Her voice was hard, no sympathy. "No," I managed. "Not bit. Just exhausted." She studied me for a long moment, then lowered the gun slightly. "Search him," she told someone else. "Full check. Any wounds, any bites, any scratches, he goes back outside." Hands pulled me up and started patting me down. Rough, but thorough. They checked every inch, looking for any sign of infection. I understood why. One infected person inside these walls could kill everyone. "He's clean," one of the searchers said. The woman nodded. "Take him to quarantine, 3-day observation. If he's still clean after that, he can join the population." They led me away from the gate, deeper into the compound. I looked back once and saw the bearcat sitting dead in the road, surrounded by them. All my supplies, everything I'd gathered, still inside. But I was alive. I was inside walls with other survivors. I'd made it 3 nights in that armored vehicle and then 7 more days surviving in a hostile world. And now I was here. The quarantine area was a small room in what had been the hospital's psychiatric ward. Reinforced walls, small window with bars, heavy door that locked from the outside. They gave me water, the MRE, and a cot. Then they locked me in. 3 days, the woman said through the door. "If you're not showing symptoms by then, you're probably clean. If you start to turn, we'll know." I ate the MRE, tasted like cardboard and salt, but was food. Drank the water, lay down on the cot. Through the small window, I could see a courtyard where people were moving around, working, living. They had a system here. Organization, hope. My name is Dalton Reed. I'm 32 years old. 10 days ago, the world ended. I survived by staying inside an armored vehicle for 3 nights, then a hardware store for 7 more days. I drove through hell to reach this place. Now comes the hard part, surviving whatever comes next. Quarantine day 1 was boring. Nobody came to check on me except a young guy who brought food twice a day. Breakfast was oatmeal and coffee. Dinner was some kind of stew. He wouldn't talk to me, just pushed the tray through a slot in the door and left. I spent the time resting, really resting, for the first time in days. The cot was uncomfortable, but better than the bearcat's bench. The room was secure. Nobody was trying to kill me. The baseline stress that had been my constant companion started to fade. I thought about what I'd been through. The office worker who'd become whatever those things were. The gas station. The nurse biting the window. Running from the hardware store with them right behind me. All of it felt distant now, like memories from someone else's life. Through the window, I watched the compound. It was bigger than I'd realized. The hospital building, plus several surrounding structures, all enclosed by walls made of vehicles and shipping containers and construction barriers. Maybe 3 or 4 acres total. I counted about 40 people moving around in the courtyard, probably more inside the buildings. They had organization. I watched supply details moving boxes, medical staff in recognizable scrubs, armed guards on the walls. Someone was running this place with military efficiency. Quarantine day 2, I woke up feeling better than I had in weeks. No headache, no dehydration symptoms, no residual panic from sleeping in an exposed position. Just normal tired from hard weeks. I did push-ups and sit-ups, tested my strength, got to 50 push-ups before my arms gave out. Not bad considering. The kid who brought food finally talked to me. His name was Jamie. Couldn't have been more than 20. Scraggly beard, nervous energy. "You came in the armored truck?" he asked while handing me breakfast. "Yeah, company vehicle, security contractor." "That's so cool. We saw you coming from way off. Everyone thought you were military at first." "Civilian. Just lucky I had access to the right vehicle when everything went bad." Jamie nodded. Lots of people got lucky in weird ways. Found the right place at the right time. Others... He trailed off. "How many people you got here?" I asked. "About 70 inside the walls. More in the surrounding buildings we're bringing in when we can. We're at capacity, though. That's why the quarantine is so strict. Can't risk infection." "I understand. 3 days is smart. It used to be 5, Jamie said. "But we had supply issues. Can't afford to feed people that long without knowing they'll contribute." "What happened to people who got turned in quarantine?" Jamie didn't answer, just looked away. I got the message. There was probably a disposal protocol. Quick and merciful, hopefully. He left and I went back to watching the courtyard. Saw a group doing weapons training, teaching people how to use firearms safely. Saw another group working on what looked like a vegetable garden. Someone was thinking long-term. Quarantine day 3, last day. By evening, I'd either be accepted into the compound or... Well, Jamie hadn't said what happened to people who got rejected for other reasons. Medical issues, psychological problems. Did they just send you back outside? I spent the day trying to present well. When Jamie brought food, I was polite and grateful. When a doctor came to do a physical examination, checking for bites, scratches, any signs of fever or illness, I cooperated fully. Answered all her questions honestly. Where had I been? What had I been exposed to? Any contact with the infected? The doctor was thorough and professional. Older woman, maybe 60, with kind eyes and hands that shook slightly. PTSD probably. Everyone here had it to some degree. "You're healthy," she told me. "Dehydrated still, malnourished, but nothing critical. You'll need to eat regularly and drink water constantly for the next week. Your body's been through trauma." "Will I be cleared?" I asked. "That's not my decision. The council votes on new members, but medically you're fine. No infection risk." "Council? We're not a dictatorship here. 6 people make decisions collectively. They'll meet tonight, review your case, and decide in the morning." She left. I spent the rest of the day nervous, which was ridiculous. I'd survived 10 days of hell, and now I was worried about a committee meeting. That night, I barely slept. Kept imagining scenarios where they rejected me. Too much risk. Not enough useful skills. Whatever rationale they came up with. Being sent back outside after getting this close to safety would break something inside me. Morning of day 4 in quarantine. Day 13 total since everything started. The woman from the gate came to my room. She looked less hostile than before, which I took as a good sign. "I'm Kendra," she said. "Security chief. The council voted." "You're in." Relief hit me hard enough that I actually felt dizzy. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You'll earn your keep. Everyone works. What skills do you have?" "Military training. 4 years Army, infantry, security experience. I can drive anything. Basic medical training. Used to study chemistry before I dropped out. Kendra raised an eyebrow. Chemistry? 2 years toward a degree. Organic chemistry, some inorganic. Didn't finish. Might be useful. We'll figure out where you fit. For now, report to supply detail. You'll haul boxes and follow orders. Prove you can work with the group. She led me out of quarantine and into the compound proper. Walking among other people, living people who weren't trying to kill me, felt surreal. I'd gotten used to isolation and constant threat. This was different. This was society, or what was left of it. The supply detail was run by a man named George, heavyset and balding, former warehouse manager. He put me to work immediately, no coddling, hauling boxes of food from the storage building to the kitchen, moving medical supplies, helping reinforce a weak point in the wall. The work was hard, but satisfying. Physical labor with visible results. By the end of the first day, I was exhausted in a good way. Muscles sore from actual work rather than from sleeping in awkward positions. They fed us in a communal dining hall, the hospital cafeteria repurposed. Dinner was rice with some kind of meat sauce, tasted fine. I sat with other supply detail workers and listened to them talk. Normal conversation, complaints about work assignments, someone's birthday coming up, plans for expanding the garden. It was almost normal. Almost like the world hadn't ended. That first night in the compound, I slept in a dorm room with 5 other people. Former hospital room converted to housing. Real bed, thin mattress but clean. No locks on the doors, which made me nervous until I realized that was intentional. Everyone could move freely. Trust was required. I slept 12 hours straight. The next few days fell into routine. Wake up, eat breakfast, report to work detail, haul supplies, break for lunch, more work, dinner, free time, sleep. Simple, sustainable. I learned how the compound worked. The 6-person council met daily to make decisions. Kendra handled security, guard rotations, wall maintenance, threat assessment. George handled supplies, inventory, rationing, distribution. A woman named Patricia ran medical. A younger guy named Marcus managed housing and infrastructure. A former teacher named Ellen coordinated education and childcare. Yes, there were kids here, about a dozen. And a man named Vincent handled what they called external operations. Scavenging runs, intelligence gathering, contact with other survivor groups. That last part interested me. Other groups? I asked Vincent about it during dinner one night. He was in his 50s, lean and weathered, spoke with a slight accent I couldn't place. 3 groups we know of, he told me. One's at the university, maybe 20 people. Mostly students who got trapped in a dorm. Another is at the industrial port, dock workers who fortified a warehouse. Maybe 15 people. Last one is a religious group that took over a church. But we don't have much contact with them. They're insular. Do you trade with them? When we can. Medical supplies for food, information for ammunition. But it's risky. Every time you leave the walls, you might not come back. Have you lost people on runs? Vincent's expression darkened. Yeah, too many. That's why we're careful about who we send out. Experience matters. I got the hint. I was too new to be trusted with external operations. That was fine. I needed to prove myself first. Week 2 in the compound, I got moved to a different assignment. The council had reviewed my skills and decided to put me on wall duty. Guard shifts, watching for threats. 4-hour shifts, rotating schedule. It was both boring and terrifying. Boring because most of the time, nothing happened. Terrifying because when something did happen, it could go bad fast. The walls weren't actually walls. They were shipping containers stacked too high, welded together, with catwalks on top. Gaps were filled with vehicles or concrete barriers. The whole perimeter was maybe half a mile total, irregular shape following the hospital property boundaries. Guards walked the catwalks with rifles and radios, maintaining constant communication. My first shift was daytime, easier than night. I was paired with a woman named Daphne who'd been here since the beginning. Former EMT knew how to handle a rifle, didn't talk much. We walked the north wall section. Below us, outside the compound, was a street full of abandoned cars. Beyond that, buildings and parking lots. And scattered throughout, them. Always visible, always present. Some moving, some standing still, all waiting for something to draw their attention. "How often do they try the walls?" I asked Daphne. "Depends on noise. If it's quiet, they wander past. If something draws them, gunshots, loud machinery, screaming, they cluster. Last month we had a breach attempt. Maybe 200 of them, all hitting one section at once. We held, but it was close." "What triggered it?" "Accident. Someone dropped a metal shelving unit in the courtyard. The crash brought them from half a mile away. Took 3 days before they dispersed enough for us to feel safe." I looked out at the dead city. "How long do you think this lasts?" "The outbreak? No idea. Could be permanent. Could burn out eventually. We're not planning on it ending. We're planning on surviving indefinitely." That was the mentality here. No rescue coming. No government sweeping in to fix things. Just survival. Day after day, building something sustainable. My shift ended without incident. I reported to the next guard team, turned over the rifle, and went to dinner. Another day survived. Week 3, I got more responsibilities. The council decided my chemistry knowledge was useful. They needed someone to help with water treatment. The compound had wells, but the water needed to be tested and treated to be safe. I worked with Patricia and her medical team, setting up a basic treatment system using bleach and filtration. It wasn't complex chemistry, but it was useful. Clean water was life. Making sure everyone had access to safe drinking water was critical. I also started teaching. Ellen asked if I could help with the kids' education. Turns out, having chemistry knowledge made me qualified to teach basic science. 3 afternoons a week, I spent an hour with the children, teaching them about how things worked, not apocalypse survival, just normal kid stuff. Why does water boil? What makes plants grow? How do batteries work? The kids were traumatized, but resilient. They'd lost parents, seen horrible things, been forced to grow up fast. But they could still laugh, still got excited about learning, still had hope. Teaching them made me feel useful in a way that hauling supplies or standing guard didn't. By week 4, I'd become part of the compound's social fabric. People knew my name, asked me questions, included me in conversations. I'd proven I could work, could be trusted, could contribute. The council assigned me to a smaller room, still shared, but only 2 people. My roommate was a guy named Oliver, who worked in the machine shop, welding and repairing equipment. He snored but was otherwise fine. Life fell into comfortable patterns. Morning shifts on the wall, afternoon work on water treatment, evening teaching sessions with the kids, dinner with various groups, rotating through different social circles. Night shifts occasionally, which were harder but manageable. The memories of those 3 nights in the Bearcat started to fade. Not forgotten, but less immediate. The terror became just background context for the person I was now. I thought about my family less obsessively. My sister in Vermont might be alive, might be dead. I'd never know. Same with my parents in Florida. Friends from before, all unknowns. Eventually, I had to accept that my old life was gone, and this was my life now. These 70 people in this compound were my family. Around week 5, things got complicated. Vincent approached me during dinner. "Council wants to see you," he said quietly. "After you eat? Meeting room?" "What about?" "They'll tell you." That was ominous. I finished dinner quickly and went to the meeting room, a former hospital administrative office, now fitted with a table and chairs. All 6 council members were present. Kendra spoke first. "Dalton, you've been here over a month now. You've proven reliable. We need to ask something of you." Here it comes, I thought. The price of safety. "We need someone to lead a scavenging run," Vincent said. "Experienced driver, calm under pressure, military background. You fit the profile." I thought I was too new for external operations. "You were," Kendra said. "But we've had losses. 3 people in the last 2 weeks. We're short on qualified people, and there's a target we need to hit soon, or the opportunity passes." Marcus pulled out a map and spread it on the table. "There's a distribution center about 5 miles northeast, grocery wholesaler. Before everything went bad, it would have had massive amounts of non-perishable food, enough to feed us for months. Why hasn't it been looted already?" "It has been," Vincent said. "Other groups have hit it, but it's huge. Warehouse covers maybe 20 acres. Nobody's cleaned it out completely. We've been planning this run for weeks, but we need the right team." "And you want me to drive?" "We want you to lead," Kendra said. "Take 3 people, whatever vehicle we can spare, hit the warehouse, get as much as you can carry, and get back. 4 days maximum. Longer than that, and we assume you're not coming back." I understood what they were really asking. Go out into the city I'd barely escaped from. Risk my life to get supplies that would benefit everyone. Maybe die in the process. But if I refused, I'd be someone who didn't pull weight when it mattered. Someone who took safety but didn't earn it. That would poison my relationship with the compound. "I'll do it," I said. "Who's on the team?" Vincent pointed at 3 names written on a notepad. "Daphne, you've worked with her. Experience with medical emergency response, good under pressure. Jamie, young but quick, knows vehicles. And Bernard, former truck driver, strong, reliable." I knew all 3. Good people. Could be worse. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning," Marcus said. "Vehicles being prepped now. You'll take the pickup truck with the armored bed. Protection, but still maneuverable. You'll have rifles, pistols, and enough ammunition for a sustained fight if necessary. Radios? Civilian band. Range is only a few miles, but you can call for support if you get close enough. Don't rely on it." The council briefed me for another hour. Route details, backup plans, emergency procedures. What to prioritize at the warehouse. Canned goods, dried goods, anything with long shelf life. Avoid frozen foods. Avoid anything perishable. "One more thing," Patricia said. "If anyone gets bit, you leave them. No exceptions. Don't try to bring them back. Don't waste time on mercy. Just leave and keep moving." The room went quiet. That was the rule. Hard, brutal, but necessary. Everyone understood. "Understood," I said. They dismissed me. I went back to my room and tried to sleep, but couldn't. Tomorrow I'd be going back outside, back into the hell I'd barely survived the first time. The only difference now was I had a team, a plan, and a reason. That had to be enough. Morning came too fast. I met the team in the motor pool. a section of the compound where they kept vehicles. The pickup truck was a Ford F-350, heavy duty with thick steel plates welded to the bed and reinforced doors. Not as tough as the Bearcat, but more agile. Daphne was checking rifles. Jamie was loading supplies into the bed: water, food, medical kit, tools. Bernard was doing a pre-trip inspection of the vehicle, checking fluids and tires. "Everyone ready?" I asked. Nods all around. Daphne handed me a rifle. "Know how to use this?" "Army infantry. I'm familiar." She smiled slightly. "Good. Try not to shoot any of us." We loaded into the truck. I took the driver's seat. Bernard rode shotgun, Daphne and Jamie in the back seat. The compound gates opened and we rolled out. The city greeted us with silence. Early morning, sun just coming up. Streets empty except for wrecks and debris. And them, scattered here and there, turning to look as we passed. I drove carefully, following the route Vincent had marked on the map. Main streets where possible, avoiding areas marked as high-density threat zones. The truck handled well, responsive despite the armor weight. We saw our first major cluster around mile 2, maybe 40 of them, grouped around the entrance to a subway station. Something had drawn them there. Sound, movement, survivors who fled underground, maybe. They turned toward our engine noise, but couldn't catch us as we drove past. "Eyes open," I said to the team. "Call out anything unusual." "Unusual like what?" Jamie asked. "It's all unusual. Roadblocks, fresh fires, large groups, anything that suggests other survivors," I clarified. "We're not the only ones moving around out here." We saw evidence of others. Fresh tire tracks in an intersection, bullet casings on a sidewalk, a barricade that looked recent, but no actual people. Mile 4, we had to detour. The main road was completely blocked by a collapsed building, rubble covering all lanes. I took a side street, wound through a residential area, saw movement in the houses, them trapped inside, pressing against windows when they heard the truck. "How do they survive?" Jamie asked. "I mean, they don't eat regular food, right?" "What do they eat?" "Each other sometimes," Daphne said quietly. "Or animals. Or they just decay slowly. Nobody knows." The warehouse complex came into view around 9 in the morning. Huge building with loading docks on all sides. Parking lot filled with trucks and cars. And them, wandering through the lot, maybe 100 visible, probably more inside. I parked the truck 2 blocks away, behind a gas station that gave us cover. We got out and assessed. "Too many to fight through," Bernard said. "We need a distraction." I thought about the Bearcat, how engine noise had drawn them. We could set off a car alarm, draw them away from one entrance, hit it while they're distracted. "How long would that distraction last?" Daphne asked. 10 minutes, maybe? Depends on the alarm. Not enough time to search the warehouse and load up. "So we set multiple alarms," Jamie suggested. "Chain them together, keep them confused and moving while we work." It was a good plan. We spent 20 minutes implementing it. Found cars with intact electronics, smashed windows to access wiring, set up 3 different vehicles to trigger their alarms in sequence, timed 5 minutes apart. Remote triggers using car batteries and timer circuits from a hardware store we passed. Jamie proved surprisingly good at improvising electronics. While the team set up the distractions, I scouted the warehouse. Found a loading dock on the east side that was accessible and relatively clear. That would be our entry and exit point. We synchronized our watches, an old-school solution, but reliable when electronics fail. First alarm would trigger in 2 minutes. That would draw the main crowd away from the east dock. We'd have 5 minutes to breach, scout the interior, and identify what was worth taking. Second alarm would give us another 5 minutes to start loading. Third alarm, final 5 minutes to finish and extract. After that, we're on our own, I told the team. No more distractions, just speed and luck. Everyone clear? Confirmed all around. We took positions near the east dock. I checked my rifle, loaded, safety off. Ready. The first alarm went off right on schedule. Loud electronic screeching from 2 blocks north. The crowd in the parking lot reacted immediately, turning and moving toward the sound. Within 90 seconds, the east dock was nearly clear. Go, I said. We moved fast, running across open pavement to the dock. Bernard forced the door with a crowbar. It gave way with a metallic bang that seemed impossibly loud. We pushed inside. The warehouse interior was vast and dark. Our flashlights cut through the gloom, showing aisles of shelving stacked floor to ceiling. Most of the shelves near the entrance were picked over, but the warehouse went back hundreds of feet. Split up, I said. 2 teams. Daphne with me, Jamie with Bernard. Mark anything worth taking. We meet back here in 4 minutes. They moved left, we moved right. Our flashlights swept across product labels. Cleaning supplies, useless. Pet food, maybe useful. Then we hit the jackpot. An entire aisle of canned goods. Beans, vegetables, soup, fruit. Hundreds of cases, largely untouched. Here, I called out. The others came running. Jamie's team had found dried pasta and rice. Between the 2 discoveries, we had enough food to justify the entire run. Second alarm went off outside. 5 more minutes. We started hauling cases to the loading dock. Each case weighed maybe 30 pounds. We carried 2 at a time, moving as fast as possible. Load the truck bed, run back for more. My arms burned. Sweat dripped into my eyes. The constant physical effort was exhausting, but there was no time to rest. Every second counted. Bernard was the workhorse, carrying 3 cases at a time, barely slowing down. Daphne and Jamie worked efficiently, no wasted motion. I pushed myself to keep pace. Third alarm, 5 minutes left. The truck bed was half full. We could maybe fit another 30 cases if we packed tight. That's when we heard it. Sound from deep in the warehouse. Not them, something else. Voices. Human voices. We all froze. You hear that? Jamie whispered. The voices were getting closer, coming from the back of the warehouse. Multiple people talking urgently. Another scavenging group. Keep loading, I said quietly. We're not here to fight survivors. But they found us anyway. 5 people emerged from the darkness, flashlights sweeping toward our position. They had guns too. Everyone tensed. A woman's voice called out. That's our haul. We were here first. I stepped forward, rifle lowered but ready. Warehouse is big enough to share. We're taking canned goods from aisle 3. You can have everything else. Like hell. Drop it and leave. This could go bad fast. 5 of them. 4 of us. If shooting started, people would die. The noise would draw every infected in the area. Nobody would win. We don't want trouble, I said. We take what we loaded. You keep what you found. Everyone leaves alive. One of their group, a man with a shotgun, stepped forward. You from the hospital? Interesting. He knew about the compound. Yeah. We're from the port. Vincent mentioned you might be making a supply run soon. The tension dropped immediately. They knew Vincent, which meant they were the friendly group he'd mentioned. The dock workers. You could have led with that, I said. The woman who challenged us laughed. Yeah, sorry. Can't be too careful. Every time we run into people out here, it's a fight. We negotiated quickly. They'd take the truck we'd used for the first distraction alarm, an old minivan they could get running. We'd take the food we'd loaded. Fair trade. They helped us finish loading the pickup. With their assistance, we got another 20 cases in before the alarms had fully run their course. By the time infected started filtering back toward the warehouse, we were loaded and ready to roll. "Good luck," the woman said. "Tell Vincent that Carla says hi." "Will do." We drove out fast, the pickup heavy with supplies. The route back was nerve-wracking. Every intersection potentially blocked, every turn potentially deadly. But we made it without major incidents. Saw some large groups that we detoured around. Had to push through one cluster of maybe 10 infected. The truck's reinforced bumpers scattered them without much trouble. We pulled into the compound around 2 in the afternoon. The gates opened and we rolled inside to cheers from other survivors. Guards helped unload the cases. George from supply detail was practically crying when he saw how much food we'd brought back. "This is months' worth," he kept saying. "Months." The council congratulated us. We got extra rations at dinner that night, celebration portions. I felt good. We'd taken a huge risk and it had paid off. Nobody had died. We'd even made contact with another survivor group peacefully. That night I slept like the dead, exhausted but satisfied. The next morning, Vincent pulled me aside. "Nice work yesterday. Council is impressed. They want to talk to you about joining external operations permanently." Meaning you'd lead more runs, scout new areas, make contact with other groups. It's dangerous but important. You'd have more authority, better living quarters, first choice on supplies. It was a promotion, a dangerous promotion, but recognition that I was valuable. Can I think about it? Take a day. Let me know. I spent that day considering. Leading external operations meant constant risk. Every run could be my last, but it also meant making a real difference. Food, medicine, information, all the things that kept the compound alive. More than that, it meant purpose. I'd survived the apocalypse so far through a combination of luck and stubbornness. Now I could turn that survival into something meaningful. By evening, I'd decided. I found Vincent and told him yes. "Good," he said. "Welcome to the fun part of the apocalypse." The fun part turned out to be a lot of planning meetings, risk assessments, and equipment checks. Over the next month, I led 4 more scavenging runs. We hit a pharmacy for medical supplies, a hardware store for tools, a sporting goods store for outdoor gear. Each run was different. Each had its own challenges. We lost someone on the sporting goods run. Jamie got separated from the group when a crowd of infected appeared unexpectedly. We heard him screaming, heard gunshots, then nothing. Bernard wanted to go back for him, but I made the call to leave, following Patricia's rule. No time for rescue, no wasting lives on people who were already dead. That one hurt. Jamie had been good people, young, optimistic despite everything. Now he was gone. We got the supplies we'd come for: tents, sleeping bags, camping equipment. But the cost was high. The council replaced Jamie with a woman named Iris who had military experience. She was competent but quiet, kept to herself. The team dynamic changed. Less talking, more efficiency. Maybe that was better. By week 8 in the compound, day 70 since the outbreak, I'd become one of the compound's key assets. The council consulted me on security matters. Other survivors asked my advice on survival tactics. The kids still came to my science classes and actually learned things. I'd built a life here. Not the life I'd planned back when I was driving an armored truck on boring security runs. But a life nonetheless. Purpose, community, contribution. The world outside the walls was still hell. Infected everywhere. Civilization collapsed. No signs of recovery. But inside these walls, we had something resembling society. We grew food, treated the sick, taught children, made plans. We survived together. Sometimes at night, I'd stand on the wall during guard shifts and look out at the dead city. Think about the bear cat still sitting where I'd abandoned it, stripped and rusted by now probably. Think about those 3 nights I'd spent trapped inside it, terrified and alone. Think about how far I'd come from that parking lot where I'd first stopped. 70 days, 10 weeks, 2.5 months. However you counted it, I'd made it this far. And I'd keep making it, one day at a time, for as long as I could. Because that's what survival meant. Not some heroic journey or grand adventure. Just the daily decision to keep going, keep working, keep contributing. Wake up, do your job, help others, go to sleep, repeat. My name is Dalton Reed. The world ended, and I survived 3 nights in an armored vehicle without leaving. Then I survived everything that came after. This is my story. For now.